Guys, look at how cute these are. And we're going to make some wax melts out of them. Can't wait.
This little guy, Rudy, and our walking adventures are the inspiration behind this project. We are always exploring somewhere, and you can see some of our adventures in our Walker's Notebook playlist. But for today, this project is our adventures in wax melt form. I'm fragrancing with a freshly cut grass scent, so it will smell like our walk and perhaps just a little bit like Rudy after he's had a jolly good roll around during one. For colour, these will be mica powder wax melts, and I'm using spearmint. And I'm also adding in some dried calendula, as our walks are always filled with so many beautiful flowers. So first we're just going to grab all of our equipment and wax. Of course, we have our gorgeous mould, and I'll be using Golden Wax 494, which is a special blend just for making wax melts. We have our laser thermometer and our melting pitcher and spoon to stir, and also our pouring jug and spoon to mix in the mica powder and fragrance oil. As I mentioned earlier today, I'm using a freshly cut grass fragrance oil, and it's going to smell fantastic. But this oil comes with a little challenge in that the flash point is just 47 degrees. That's 116 degrees Fahrenheit. That's extremely low, guys. In fact, it's so low that this melt will be changing back into solid state almost as I'm pouring, so timing here is crucial. And I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. My baking tray, guys, if you are working in a small kitchen as small as mine, I highly recommend that you buy at least one baking tray. This is how I'm going to move my melts out of the kitchen later without disturbing them as they harden up. Definitely my top tip for small space makers. And then I'm just going to grab my pan to make a double boiler to melt the wax. It just needs a couple of inches of water in the bottom of the pan, and then it goes onto the cooker on a medium to low heat. And I'm just going to leave that to warm up while I measure out my ingredients and set up my mould on the worktop right next to it. As I'm grabbing my scales, I'm also grabbing my maker's notebook. Always take notes, guys. My top tip for new makers, buy a notebook. Before you buy anything else, buy a notebook and keep notes of everything you do. Ingredients, recipe, method, temperatures. It's the most important piece of kit I have. For this project, I'm just making a small batch of wax melts, so I'm measuring out 100 grams of wax and I'm weighing straight into my melting pitcher. So I just need to make sure that I tear out the weight of my pitcher off the scales before I start adding my 494. In addition to my wax, I'm also preparing a gram of mica, and I'm using a 10% fragrance load. I'll measure these and then I'll set them to one side until the wax is melted and ready to use. I'm not weighing out my calendula, I'm just using a tiny pinch in each cavity of the mould. So I'm just going to eyeball this as I set up my mould on my baking tray. I'm going to melt my wax. That will happen around 49 degrees Celsius, and then I'll continue to heat it up to 80 degrees Celsius. That's 176 degrees Fahrenheit, to open up the molecules in the wax, ready to receive the mica powder and fragrance oil. There's no rush, I'm just heating as gently and as evenly as possible and stirring as I go, just to try and keep the temperature of the wax consistent in the pitcher. Normally, when my wax reaches 80 degrees Celsius, I take it off the heat and add colour and fragrance. Today I'm doing things a little differently. I'm still going to add my mica powder as soon as the wax comes off the heat, but the flash point of this oil is just 47 degrees, that's 116 degrees Fahrenheit, so low it's actually lower than the melt point of the wax. And at flash point the oil will be giving off vapours, so of course I'll be losing scent in that vapour. And you can imagine that if I added oil at a higher temperature, that I run the risk of burning off all the fragrance oil and not actually having any scent in my finished wax melts at all. So we're going to add the oil at a low temperature and pour at a low temperature. And since we're adding low, I'm going to practice tempering my wax too. Just like tempering chocolate to make it shiny. After I add and mix my mica, I'm just going to let the wax cool right down to below melt point. Then I'm going to heat it back up again to 55 degrees Celsius. That's 131 degrees Fahrenheit, and add my fragrance oil. If I've timed this right, then adding the oil at 55 degrees should cool the wax down to flash point almost immediately and minimise fragrance loss, and I'll end up with lovely shiny smooth wax melts from the tempering. If it goes wrong, then it won't be smooth and shiny and they probably won't smell of anything either. But what's life without a little challenge? Here we go. Wow, look at that mica. Gorgeous. I always stir my fragrance oil for at least 2 minutes. And then the pour. That looks amazing. Once I've poured the wax into the mould, I'll put it somewhere safe and leave it for at least 24 hours to set. And here we are, a full day later. In fact, a day and a bit later, because it's a really hot day and I've just waited for the temperature to drop a bit before handling these. And they've set beautifully. It's really easy to unmould them with this silicone mould. The melts will be stuck to the mould, so I just need to pull gently along the edges of the mould to release the tension, and then the melts will just pop right out. Just like that. So easy. And look how beautifully that has turned out. Shiny and smooth. Beautiful. And you can even see the calendula there. I can't wait to melt these. After this, the only thing left to do is to store these away to cure in a dark, cool, dry place for 2 weeks. The melts do have a cold throw, which is a relief, and once they're cured, then I'll melt them and I'll film an update to see if there's any hot throw. So look out for that on the channel, and I'll also add a link in the description below once it's available to watch.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm making similar content every week, so please drop by again. If you did enjoy it, please leave a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.